Hello, my name's Terry, and I'm a film studies teacher at Fine Arts College. Today I want to talk to you about what is, to my mind, Woody Allen's most accomplished film, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Since the mid-60s, prolific American writer, director, musician, actor, and philosopher Woody Allen has graced our screens with his humorous and quirky films. There will be a few spoilers. Of his more than 60 films, Crimes and Misdemeanors stands out because it's Woody Allen at his philosophical best, as well as including lots of his typically quirky comic moments. It's a film that's both fun and yet deeply humane, and forces us to ponder serious questions about how we're living our lives. Although many people take exception to the odd choices Allen has made in his personal life, I'm going to leave that aside for the present talk and just focus on the man's work. In Crimes and Misdemeanors, Allen addresses the conflict between egoism and altruism. The film poses the age-old question of whether living an ethical life is worthwhile. The higher the cost of doing the right thing or avoiding the wrong one, the harder that choice becomes. Allen addresses the conflict between egoism and altruism by drawing a realistic character, Judah Rosenthal, a successful ophthalmologist who is forced into a dilemma between protecting his happiness and reputation through committing an evil deed, or renouncing the evil deed, knowing that it will cost him his social status and his marital and family security and happiness. Intuitively, it would seem that anyone who has to ask what he's going to get in return for a good deed is probably not a virtuous person, since the question itself presupposes that a self-interested calculation of reward is the only motivator. If push comes to shove, the egoist in a dilemma between his own interests and the interests of others will always look out for number one. But in ethical life, if it's going to be distinguished from mere selfishness, which seems the opposite of an ethical life, must involve altruism and a genuine regard for others. Allen wasn't the first person to address these ethical questions. The ancient Stoics posed similar ones. They celebrated philosophers such as Socrates, who committed his life to the view that justice is intrinsically preferable to injustice. Crimes and Misdemeanors is a throwback to the age-old Socratic dilemma, whether it's better to suffer evil or to inflict it. In moments of crisis, one's choices could be narrowed to a terrible dilemma between committing evil or suffering it. Or worse, collaboration with powerful persecutors or dissent and victimization by them. In Book 2 of Plato's Republic, the affluent Athenian Glaucon attacked Socrates' view that justice is intrinsically preferable to injustice. He claimed that most people act justly not because they really think it's better for them to do so, but because they lack the power to act unjustly with impunity. To illustrate his point, Glaucon tells the story of Gyges the Lydian, who discovered a ring with magical powers that allowed him to be invisible on command. Possessing the ring gave Gyges the dispensation to commit injustices with complete impunity. Consequently, he exploited the powers to the full, gaining great political power and influence as a result. Glaucon concludes that anyone in possession of such powers would be a fool not to use them, and the only reason anyone would pretend to disagree with this egocentric course of action is for the appearance of social respectability. Against this cynical view, Socrates argued that power and influence gained by unjust means would be hollow values. They wouldn't bring the true fulfillment to those who possess them. The bearer of advantages so gained could never view them as his personal achievements, and even if he could fool others, he would know that they were not deserved. While the man whose achievements thus gained through deception might enjoy external material rewards and a good reputation among others, these would only ever serve to mask an interior disharmony or a kind of sickness of the soul. As the film opens, Judah Rosenthal, having engaged in a long-term extramarital affair, is in danger of losing everything: his marriage, his family, and his reputation. Angelica Houston plays his somewhat neurotic mistress, Dolores. She's grown weary of being sidelined and now wants Judah to fulfill past promises made to her by leaving his wife. From the start of the film, we find Judah, calmly at first, but then desperately, struggling to keep a lid on the situation, while Dolores persistently threatens to expose the affair, as well as some of Judah's financial misdeeds. At the height of his crisis, Judah confides in a close family friend, the Rabbi Ben. Ben tells Judah, a lapsed Jew, that he couldn't live if he didn't think there were some sort of a moral structure and genuine forgiveness. He advises Judah to confess the wrong and hope for forgiveness from his wife Miriam. Judah can't imagine that Miriam would forgive him and admits that he can't bear the thought of the consequences for himself or to Miriam's pride. Eventually, Judah's desperation leads him to call his brother Jack, who has a history of criminal activity and experience in handling dirty business, such as eliminating unwanted nuisances. Like Socrates' ancient Greek interlocutors, Glaucon and Callicles, Jack has a hard-nosed approach to life. He defines real life in terms of sheer power over others, and real men are those who know how to wield it when necessary. In his desperation and a moment of particularly poignant bad faith, Judah adopts Jack's outlook to rationalize his decision to hire a hitman to eliminate his mistress and the threat that she poses to his comfortable lifestyle. However, having gone through with the murderous deed, Judah is then plagued by guilt. Not fully convinced by his own rationalization, he begins to have deep misgivings, even to the extent that he questions his atheism. Alongside his fear of for his soul, there's the equally pressing fear that he'll be found out by the police. But after a time, another man, a drifter with an existing criminal record, is arrested for the crime, and Judah's fears of being discovered fade away. He's gotten away with murder and is scot-free. Alan explores the question of how a man like Judah can live with himself, knowing that he's committed a great evil. In order to explore this question in more depth, Alan includes a lighter subplot that runs parallel to the main plot, and opposes two characters who have completely different values and life goals. On the one hand is Judah's brother-in-law, Clifford, played by Woody Allen himself. Clifford is a struggling artist who makes serious documentaries about philosophical issues, but he's unemployed, professionally unsuccessful, and unhappily married. He escapes from his troubles into the cinema with his teenaged niece, and is eventually pressured by his wife to take charity from her brother, Lester, played by Alan Alda, in the form of a lower-paid job directing a biographical profile documentary about his celebrity brother-in-law. Clifford continues to pursue his own private project, a documentary about a philosophy professor. It's a hobby, it doesn't bring him any money, and he also begins an extramarital courtship of an attractive producer, Hallie Reid, played by Mia Farrow, from the crew of Lester's profile documentary. Meanwhile, Hallie herself is impressed by the more successful Lester and begins to fall prey to his charms, much to Clifford's chagrin. Ellen seems to suggest that another disadvantage for the man of integrity is that women prefer successful men rather than men of moral or intellectual substance. In the final act, Ellen brings the two plot threads together by having a family wedding at which Clifford and Judah Rosenthal find themselves alone in an empty room, sharing a quiet chat. Judah covertly confesses his own crimes to Clifford by pretending that they're an idea for a movie. The ending of Judah's film has the murderer reconciled with his deed. Clifford mulls this over and responds that he would change the ending and have the murderer confess the wrong, because in the absence of a god or something, he's then forced to assume that responsibility himself, and then you have tragedy. Judah responds, that's movies and not reality, echoing the response to Socrates, who is often accused of pushing rarefied ideals incompatible with the real world. The film ends with a flashback voiceover by Professor Levy, the subject of Lester's documentary, who has committed suicide. An existentialist, Levy explains that we all make decisions large and small throughout our lives. Man defines himself by the choices he has made. We are, in fact, the sum total of our choices. Events unfold, he explains, in a manner that's indifferent to human happiness. The movie ends on a note of hope rather than despair, because, as Levy says, it's only us with our capacity to love that give meaning to the indifferent universe. Socrates had maintained that there was no proof that a man must conduct himself one way or the other. Rather, there's an existential commitment to be made, and the decision one way or the other is based on how we choose to live with ourselves. At the core of this existentialist vision is a realistic admission that the universe does not offer us an overarching moral order, nor does it protect us. Nevertheless, we are charged with the responsibility and the opportunity to fashion human lives that are worthy of the freedom that we uniquely possess.